25-26 budget work session. We're going to start by doing what we usually should be doing at work sessions, which is let's introduce everybody going around the table. I'll start and then I'll move to my left. Ted Wheeler, Mayor.
Commissioner Nate Gonzalez.
Peter Holzman, City Economist.
Ruth Levine, City Budget Office Director.
Jonas Beer, Deputy City Administrator of Budget and Finance and Chief Financial Officer.
Mike Jordan, Interim City Administrator.
Vegas Maps, Portland City Council.
Carmen Rubio, Commissioner.
All right, Commissioner, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself as well.
Hi, I'm Dan Ryan. Good morning.
Hey, Dan the man. Dan the man.
Welcome. Colleagues, each year as we prepare for the upcoming budget cycle, financial leadership within the city provides council with updates on the city's fiscal condition as well as our economic outlook. Today, we're going to hear from the city's chief financial officer, the budget director, and the city economist as we prepare for an historic transition in city government and into the fiscal year 25-26. We have two clear objectives for today's meetings. First, to provide transparent communication about the trends and the realities that frame the budget guidance as well as the upcoming decision-making. And second, to prompt questions and discussion from members of the City Council so we can share perspectives as city service areas begin fiscal year 25-26 budget development. The presentation will close with a preview of the budget development process improvements that are underway, and there's quite a few of them. These process changes support the organizational realignment that's mandated by the Portland voters, and they're consistent with recommendations from the GTAC and an independent consultant report on the city's budget process that you're all very familiar with. Later this week, I anticipate publishing my fiscal year 2025-26 budget guidance. I expect that this guidance may be further updated later this year once a new mayor and city council members have been elected. We're facing a challenging period with one-time federal resources expiring, increasing expenditures due to inflation and negotiated contracts, and trying to meet the needs and desires of Portlanders, which have admittedly changed substantially in recent years. For example, prior to the pandemic, homelessness was a critical issue for the city to address, but it did not have the level of urgency or, frankly, the demand that it does today. We've seen similar trends in addressing graffiti, litter, as well as public safety. Without new additional resources, we're obviously faced with difficult trade-offs. In an effort to alleviate some of the budgetary strain the new council and the mayor will walk into, we are already taking steps. And I want to underscore this point because there's a lot of people running for office. A lot of people want to sit around this council table. This council has not gone without addressing the fiscal cliff. We've been talking about it a lot. It has come up in each of our budget sessions over the course of many years, and we have taken concrete and we will continue to take concrete steps to lessen the impact in fiscal year 25-26 by making changes now. In fact, we've already adapted a number of them, and you're going to hear about that today. For example, we're working with city bureaus to identify any saving expenditures in this fiscal year to reduce the impact on next year's budget, starting the budget development process early to ensure that there's a lot of education, good analysis, facts, and communications related to the budget through work sessions, through new websites, and additional briefings for the new electeds when they're elected. And we're continuing to work with our government relation team to advocate for additional resources from the local, state, and federal level. Portlanders are counting on us to deliver services and solve problems within our means. We must use the taxpayer dollars to deliver high-quality services that address the needs that they expect us to address. With all that said, I'll now hand this over to City Administrator Michael Jordan for some introductory comments. Michael, good morning.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. Just very briefly, this is going to be a historic and challenging budget cycle If for no other reason than we hand this budget off to a new mayor and a new city council to prepare for this ultimately deliberating on the budget that we're preparing right now. I think the good news is that the city's new organizational structure allows us to have venues for conversations we haven't had before. We're able to prioritize across the entire enterprise better than we have in the past. And I think look for opportunities to collaborate across bureaus and service areas that we haven't had in the past. So I think we have some opportunities there. We are going to be, as the mayor has noted, we're going to be balancing the immediate needs of Portlanders and the immediate issues that are on our streets and in our community. And we're going to have to balance those against long-term sustainability for the city as an institution. At this time, I'm really prioritizing trying to be more transparent than we've ever been in the past and trying to maintain as much flexibility as we can moving into next calendar year for that new council because they will have some challenging choices. I want to thank Jonas, I want to thank Ruth, Peter, and all the folks at CBO, and quite frankly, the financial staffs in all the bureaus. They have taken this up earlier than they normally would have to and are going through steps that are new to them. And the staff deliberating process, doing all the things that I mentioned earlier about enterprise prioritization and all of those kinds of things. I want to thank the staffs. They're stepping up in this challenging time and providing multiple forums and different ways to communicate, both internally with staff, but looking forward to communicating with the public also. So I want to thank them for their efforts. Lastly, maybe just on a personal note, the last time I remember a budget this challenging was in 1997, preparing for fiscal 1998. Measure 47 and 50 had just passed. The legislature was trying to figure out how it was actually going to work. We took a 17% cut in property tax revenue that year. It was by far the number one source of revenue for cities in Oregon at that time. Still is for small and medium-sized cities. And I think the lesson from that is that we got through it and we made tough choices and we continued to provide services that our citizens required us to provide. And we recovered from that through a lot of diligence, a lot of prioritization, a lot of tough choices. And so I'm confident that we'll get through this and we'll make the tough choices and we'll continue to provide the services that Portlanders expect of us. So with that, I want to turn it over to Jonas and have him start us through the presentation.
Great, thanks, Mike. Mayor and Commissioners, again, for the record, Jonas Beer, Deputy City Administrator of Budget and Finance and Chief Financial Officer. Need to figure out a way that I don't follow the headliner in this run of show, but we'll work on that. So just want to take a couple steps back. On October 9th, City Council authorized the fiscal year 24-25 fall bump ordinance. During that presentation and in guidance related to development of the bump ordinance, the mayor and city leadership communicated that the city is facing significant structural financial challenges, which we'll talk about today. As the mayor mentioned, actions are currently underway to identify current year expense reductions and hold funds in contingency for essential needs this fiscal year and to position the city as best as possible to meet the challenge in fiscal 25-26 and beyond. While there are some signs of a post-pandemic return to financial normalcy, many areas of concern remain. Some of the things that we're going to talk about today are less than pleasant, though should not be a surprise. The current financial realities will require the incoming mayor and city council to make very difficult funding decisions in 2025. The city will be in a significant budgetary constraint environment. In order to keep ongoing expenses within available revenue limitations, we will likely need to identify things that we stop doing. That's difficult to hear, it's difficult to say, and it's certainly going to be difficult to do. As the city's chief financial officer, I've committed to honest and transparent communication so that upcoming decisions can be made with clarity, with an eye towards long-term financial sustainability and in alignment with the priorities of Portlanders. Today's presentation will present context about the general economic environment and will highlight specific areas of known revenue and expense challenges. We have around 70 minutes of prepared information with the remainder of the morning available for questions and discussion. Additionally, we have a number of Bureau and service area representatives in the room and online to support the conversation. Generally, today's presentation is organized as follows. First, City Economist Peter Holzman and I will present a general overview of the macroeconomic picture and information related to major city revenue streams, and then we'll pause at that point for Q&A related to the revenue side of the equation. Second, City Budget Office Director Ruth Levine will present information regarding city expenditure pressures, and then we'll pause again for Q&A related to expenditures. Lastly, we do want to leave time to communicate information about the ongoing budget process improvements and to preview the Mayor's 25-26 budget guidance. Next slide. So the goals of the conversation are reiterated here. We've kind of talked about this. We are, of course, eager to hear all of your thoughts. Flag, we do anticipate very good questions, and many of those we may not have answers to here on the floor, but we'll answer what we can, and we'll inventory any items that require additional follow-up. And then the next slide here just highlights, previews the key points and previews today's ultimate conclusion, which is that we're facing a difficult task to prepare a balanced budget that fits within the city's revenue constraints. Again, finally, before we dig in, just wanted to note a reminder that this presentation focuses on where we are and how we got here. The process to identify solutions will occur over the coming months as bureaus and service areas develop budget concepts for vetting in early 25 with Portlanders and with the new mayor and city council. And now I'll hand off to Peter to start a conversation about the city's economic outlook.
Yeah, and for the record, Peter Holzman, City Economist. I'm going to briefly go through just a general economic conditions and outlook, and then move on to the revenue picture. And so we can go to the next slide. For the U.S., economists look at four major indicators: unemployment, production, inflation, and income. All of those are looking great for the U.S. as a whole. They're all at or near all-time lows. Inflation is down to 2.4% by CPI, similar from PCE, which is the Fed's preferred measure. And all indications are that the Federal Reserve is navigating towards a soft landing where we won't necessarily have a recession after coming off the high inflation that many economists expected previously. For Portland, it's a more nuanced story, and there's really a lot going on, and it's definitely not as clear cut. So we can go to the next slide. Let me apologize for this graph. It is a bit messy, and that's because the data are messy. And when we talk about population, we have the census. For every 10 years, they do the census. We have a good starting point. In between censuses or censi, there are a few different surveys that go out that kind of try to pinpoint how much population growth or decrease there has been. These oftentimes agree. In recent years, they have disagreed, and it's been, I think, a little bit confusing. So I'll run through them real quick. The orange line is from the Population Research Center at Portland State University. This is in many cases, the most important estimate for us because it's tied to state shared revenue, both for schools and for state shared revenue that goes to the general fund and for the gas tax. The yellow line is the American Community Survey. It's a census product. They do one-year estimates, but then they also do a larger sample of what they call the 5-year estimates, and so that's the blue line. And so as just a brief, the yellow line is the worst. It shows the strongest decrease. The census would say to use the blue line when you can because it's more accurate. They have a larger sample. The problem is that it's much more lagged. It's the most recent data we have is from 2022. I think the big takeaway from all of this is trying to figure out what's actually going on. And it seems as if Portland lost population in the immediate aftermath of COVID. And then since then, based on the blue line and also Population Research Center's estimates, we've been either lost a few thousand, gained a few thousand, net basically flat. And again, this is the most recent we have, and population is a very important indicator for where we're going. It drives employment and drives a lot of different factors. So it is worth noting all the different surveys that we have and kind of what they're telling us. Next slide. This is the last graph I'll apologize for. So this is total non-farm employment, and this relates to when you read that the U.S. added 240,000 jobs. This would be the equivalent of that report. Because the U.S. and the city have such different populations, we indexed it to 2020, the first year. And so basically this tells you what's happened since 2020. The last note on the survey is it's based on employers and their establishments. And so we'll get to that. What this tells you, and just for example, to read the United States line, the U.S. lost roughly 13%, and it's back to being above 5%, 5% above where we were in COVID in terms of total non-farm employment. Everything below the yellow line is below average. And so all the other ones that we're talking about are kind of below average. So Oregon, the dark blue line, is below the U.S. It's still above where we were in 2020. The 7 counties that make up the Portland metropolitan region also are above above zero, that dashed green line. And then we get to San Francisco and Multnomah County. And both of those were 5% below where we were pre-COVID. The nuance here is that this is a survey of employer establishments. When we ask employees, we do the local area unemployment survey, we still have an unemployment rate in line with the nation's. And we have median income growth in line with the nation's. And so employees are doing fine, but there are less of them located within the Portland region. The implications of that are work from home, high cost of living, things where employers moved out of the region, and they could still live here, but their firm may be located somewhere else.
Peter, quick question.
Yeah.
Is Clark County part of Metro?
Yes.
Okay, that's why it's skewed higher.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, thanks.
I want to make sure I understood your last point. So even if an employer relocates somewhere else, if their employees stay here, you're saying that gets picked up. I just want to make sure I understand the push through there. So someone's working from home, company relocates to Clark County or somewhere else, they stay in Portland. How does that flow through on those other metrics?
Yeah, because one is a survey of the individual. They'll survey an individual in Portland, and that Portland individual will say, I'm employed still. And so it won't affect the unemployment rate. And again, our unemployment rate is right in line with the nation's. But this survey is of the employer. And so they will say that employee will have moved in the survey from Multnomah County to Clark County.
Not to belabor the point, so is there any indication, though, that employment base hasn't declined? I mean, is there a separate survey? So I understand wage growth and unemployment rate, but in just the gross number, total number of folks with jobs in the region, is there anything that argues against what you're showing here?
That we've grown employees, not with the population numbers as they are now.
Okay, just want to make sure I was following. Thank you.
Next slide. This is a downtown office vacancy. And again, one of the challenges is how they measure downtown and how those things always change. But basically, among all of these, we're one of the worst in the nation. The reason I'm emphasizing this is the implications towards property taxes. And we'll talk about that later. But basically, it's pushing down our expected growth rate of property taxes to be very low. I will add one quick nuance to this. In the run-up to 2020, the Portland region built a lot of office space. And you can see we started off at 15% vacancy before COVID even happened, which is high. Yeah, it's not astronomically high. You would normally expect between 10 and 12% vacancy rate for offices, but it is high, and I think that is noteworthy, that we did start from a high place, and we're still at a high place.
Peter, do you have any comparables to cities like Milwaukee, Seattle?
I will say for this one in particular and how they define downtown, we were the worst. And other ones were 6th or 8th or whatever because they define it differently and they have a different sample. I don't have off the top of my head.
That's okay.
Seattle's one,
I just, the other ones you had comparables, so I was just curious.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a quick question, Peter, too. So what was it that drove that overinvestment on the front end, do you think?
That's a good question. And what drives developers to kind of invest in an area? We had a lot of permitting growth across hotels and office space. And I think some of that is we had strong growth in population and a lot of in rents and all those other indicators that would drive developers to think that it's going to continue and so that they should put down place. And then, of course, COVID happened and we can't see if they were right.
Right, and that tax credit that we passed earlier, is that making any difference at all? Has that helped?
The tough thing there is we don't know which ones would have left because it's an incentive that we know some are staying, and we just don't. It's really hard to figure out what they would have done if it wasn't in place, and so I can't say.
To follow up with Commissioner Rubio's thoughts, I think those reports we see on reputation surveys, right before 2020, we were like almost the highest and then nosedive. So I think that crisscrossing that would give a lot of information to this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And if I apologize for interrupting because I know you do want to get to the end of your presentation and do take questions, but as long, I want to jump on Commissioner Rubio's question too. Actually, let me hold off until I'll let you finish your show and then we'll come back.
And this is downtown hotel occupancy. There's, again, different measures, and I know Travel Portland's coming later, and they'll present something else. This is from their data. What this shows is a little bit of good news in the sense that we've seen climbing summer hotel occupancy. It's not necessarily a negative, but one of the things to note about that is that took a lot of effort. There were a number of events. There's the Providence Park, the Rose Festival, things along those lines, which have been cited as driving that. We're not seeing any growth during the shoulder seasons that would have been normally business travel. And so that's a substantial portion of it. It's kind of, it makes it harder to really drive up these numbers without it. And not much more to add to the story there, but it's just worth giving you the general picture of what's going on in downtown hotels. And so just to close this portion of the economic outlook, employment and population are very important to long-term growth rates. And right now, the expectation is basically both are going to be flat. The tourism industry has been more reliant on events as business travel is low. And then everything going on downtown in terms of multifamily development, hotels, and the reevaluation of office space is really getting is driving down those property values and it having an impact on our property taxes. Despite that, most of the general fund revenue is insulated from outright declines. The way this is all going to play out is it's going to be much slower growth rates than we've historically had. And so I'm going to move on into the revenue side. Most of what I talk about is going to be general fund revenue only. I will have a couple, side notes on local option levies because as they're related to property taxes, and then I'll finish with just one brief slide on the clean energy surcharge, which supports the Portland Clean Energy Fund. And a quick reminder, this is everything that we're going to be talking about is still in development. So anything that's a forecast is subject to change. It's not going to change the narrative. Nothing's it's just numbers may move around a little bit. And a lot of what I'm showing you is from last year as well. This is the general fund revenue for the past 5 years. And just as a note for the public, you can access this. Owen States, one of our budget analysts, put it on Tableau, so you can click through and see how revenue has come in for the city, both for the general fund and for citywide. But just pulling apart the two big takeaways I think you should have are, one, the majority, 75% or so of our revenue comes from two sources, which is property taxes and business license taxes. Property taxes are about 45 to 50%, and then business license taxes are roughly 30%. 30%. And so everything else is, there's a smattering of other things in there as well. The other thing I want to point out is that last year's revenue was pretty flat. And that is large, and that's despite us having some TIF districts coming back. So you can see the property tax growth, and that's largely related to the TIF districts. The reason why it was flat is because business license taxes declined by 10%. And this was expected and forecasted, and I will go through that. So before going, just some context setting on business license taxes. These are 2.6% tax on net income, which is basically profits. It's based on business activity, so it's not where the employer is located. So for example, if there was a large software company that had no employees in Portland, but Portland residents bought from that software company and they could have revenue from the area, they would pay the tax proportional to how much activity there was relative to the nation as a whole on their total profits. The expected tax, the way these businesses work is they'll pay an estimated tax liability in April. That's what comes in April. And then they are pretty much all extended filers. And so 6 months later, they will file for refunds or things along those lines. So they, generally speaking, overpay because of the penalties and then get refunds later. The reason I'm pointing this out is because tax season really straddles fiscal years. And it's an important note for later on. And then finally, just to give you guys, or to give everyone an idea of who pays this tax, there are over 50,000 registered business license payers in the system. Over, it's very heavily concentrated among a small percentage of those. And so the top 20 payers pay over 20%, and less than 2% of the total amount of payers pay close to 3/4. So it's again, very concentrated. And a lot of these are large national corporations. And what that means is you can sort of tie it to like stock market performance, because those are based on earnings and that sort of thing. And a lot of these large national corporations have to report their earnings to the Securities Exchange Commission. And so that gives you an idea of what is going on with some of our largest payers. And there's also a little bit of a way to kind of mine that for information for what's going to happen for us in the next fiscal year. I'll be brief on this slide. Corporate profits spiked significantly in 2020. They've relatively flatlined since then. And the other thing I'll point out about this is it tracks pretty well with an exponential growth curve, not to get like super wonky, but roughly what that means is that if you were just basing it on its history, you would expect next year to be 8% growth. Again, so if Portland followed the nation, you would expect 8% growth. But there's a number of reasons. One, we're not just, there's a number of reasons why we'll be more conservative than that when we're actually projecting out. So this is the history. And it's grown significantly, but then as you can see in fiscal year 24, it declined by 10%. This has been in the forecast for multiple years. And again, in the April 23 forecast, it was 180 and we collected 186 million. So this was not a surprise. The rationale was that early in COVID, businesses had a lot of pricing power. There's a lot of demand. They could raise prices without demand falling substantially. And then simultaneously, wages are sticky. It takes, contracts come up every year. So they had a period of time where they could increase their prices without their expenses rising similarly. And so profit margins for S&P 500 companies, for example, rose to 13%, 12.5 to 13% for a bit. And then since then, as consumers stopped, it became a little bit more elastic with their demand, and they had to raise wages. We've seen profit margins fall back down to their long-run average between 11.5%, 12%. And 1% is a huge amount when you're talking about trillions of dollars. And so we expected the decline to happen based off of that just very quick and simple analysis. And we expected it to happen in tax year 22. That was basically lines up with when the profit margins fell. In April of 23, we collected too much revenue, and it was because they were basically all doing quarterly estimated payments. And so what we did is just a quick flipped it to fiscal year 24, and we expected a lot of refunds in fiscal year 24 as they basically overpaid in fiscal year 23, and fiscal year 24 was going to be a rough year in terms of business license tax revenue as we issued a lot more refunds. And so you can go to the next slide. And that's basically exactly what happened. Refunds doubled. We issued $28 million more in refunds than we normally do. And that's the graph on the left. And you can see a lot of that happened in the first 6 months of the fiscal year. Right now, looking forward, there's no indication that this is going to happen again. Refunds are back to normal levels, and revenues are tracking as they were, if not better than they were in fiscal year 23. And so that is kind of the baseline for the upcoming fiscal year in terms of business license taxes. The preliminary forecast, and right now my expectation is after we get back to normal is 5% growth. Some of it has to do with, if we have employment loss and population is stagnant and our relative proportion to the US as a whole is decreasing, we're going to see a little bit of cost. And then the other thing is I would always be naturally conservative when projecting out, business license tax growth, because even if I was doing the nation, I wouldn't expect 8% necessarily next year. One important caveat on this, 5%, if all of our revenues were growing 5%, that would be fantastic, and we wouldn't be having this difficult work session. This makes up roughly 30% of our general fund revenues. So to get to the big piece and the really slow driver is property taxes, and I just figured I would remind everyone just of some basic property tax terms. And so real market value is what the assessor thinks you could sell your house for. It's what most people think of when they think of property value. The maximum assessed value is either that number or it's the 1995 property value plus 3% growth since that year, roughly. And it's whichever one is lower. And so for most Portlanders, it's basically always been the 1995 plus 3%. What's going on in the downtown means that it's starting to become a question of the real market value might fall below that assessed value, which means really low assessed value growth. Then the other thing to note on this one is Measure 5, which limits how much the government can collect in property taxes. And when the real market value falls enough, it compresses how much the government collects. And the way that compression works is local options get compressed first, and then for example, if you're a resident and you're paying property taxes and you have a falling house value, you would pay $0 to the local options before the general fund is affected, which makes the local options much more volatile because they're much more susceptible to compression changes. And then lastly, Measure 50 limits the assessed value growth. So it's kind of historically kept us insulated from severe drops because what we would have been collecting in property taxes is would be much higher today if it wasn't for Measure 50. And so that means we have more room to fall before we actually see declines. This shows what the forecast would be with the historical AV, assessed value growth, and historical compression and historical delinquency rates. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that basically this was the forecast last year, and that is 35 million. What this means is at the end of the 5 years, we'll be collecting $35 million less per year from property taxes than we otherwise would because of what is going down in terms of downtown property values and things along those lines. I'll also note that we just got the assessor's report for the upcoming fiscal year, and early indications that I would be more likely to decrease this than I would be to increase this. And so I think this is just worth noting that. Finally, just a note, and I know we'll talk more about this later, but local options are forecasted to have a compression rate of 30%, which is very high by fiscal year 25-26. That was in last year's forecast. It's not news to them. And those may not change too much, but it does put significant pressure on both those funds, the Parks Levy and the Children's Fund. I'll just real briefly talk about other general fund discretionary. Utility license fees and franchises, that's a 5% gross revenue tax on public and private utilities. It brought in close to $100 million last year. Basically, recent private utility rate increases are the reason it's growing, and also public, but the private has kind of outpaced the public recently. Transient lodging taxes, I hinted at this when we're talking about downtown hotel occupancy. We're right in line with what we were collecting last year. There's not really much of we're not seeing a ton of growth. We saw the increase in occupancy rate. We haven't seen those quarterly payments yet, so there is potential for some upside there. But at the same time, this isn't going to grow 5-10%. It's going to be flatter than that. And then lastly, state shared revenue. This is majority related to liquor and less than $2 million from cannabis and cigarette taxes. It's very slow growing, and specifically because it's tied to our population. And it's basically flat in terms of, it'll be a couple $100,000 more next year. All right, excellent. We've kind of talked a lot and talked fast, and so I'm going to just big picture what all of this means is that expenses are going to outpace revenues. And so expenses right now are forecasted at roughly 4%. Revenues are going to be lower than that. It's really what is driving that is largely related to property tax growth. So over half of our revenue is close to flat. And so it's really hard to get up to the 4% that we would need. And since our revenues aren't keeping up with our expenses, that is going to have to drive cuts. And that is that's before council adds anything. And so just to belabor that point, what's included in the expense forecast is only things that council has already adopted or allocated. And so anything like future labor bargaining agreements or funding expiring one time, that is going to be additional cuts beyond the cuts that we are taking based on just the baseline forecast. And then this is my last slide. Leaving the general fund very briefly, this is not new. A reminder that last year around this time, I took over the clean energy surcharge tax forecast. This supports PSEF. This is unlikely to change. The revenue came in at 199 million versus the forecast of 190 million. It may go up, may go down based on prior tax payments, but over the 5-year span, it's about right.
Great. So council will let Peter catch his breath for just a few minutes, and I'll take a few additional slides on non-general fund revenues, and then we'll open up for questions. We'll walk through this pretty quickly, but want to just make sure we have shared context. So permitting revenues, what this slide shows is that after kind of early 2000s, pre-pandemic, I guess the late teens, had significant growth aligned with permitting activity. You can see a buildup of that reserve that happened. And then, of course, we know over the past few years that has become out of balance. And we've spent down the majority of those reserves. This led to the decision last fiscal year to cut a number of positions, which did slow the pace at which that reserve is being depleted. But cost recovery within that area is still not quite adequate to match the expenses. A little early, the forecast hasn't quite been updated, so this only shows through fiscal 24. So a little early to draw too many conclusions, but that's the facts here. Would also just note that there is a budget note that instructs Portland Permitting and Development to re-examine the reserve policy, and I'm working closely with DCA Oliveira and team to monitor revenues and to develop options for refining that reserve policy going forward. Next slide. Transportation. This slide shows revenue sources, but predominantly the two main contributors to general transportation revenues, which is the State Highway Fund and parking revenues, resources collected from the Fixing Our Streets program. But as a reminder, those resources, the Fixing Our Street resources, are not considered general transportation revenues and can only be spent on projects and programs described specifically in that voter-approved measure. So you can see here that much of the challenge PBOT has faced since the pandemic was related to reduction in parking revenues, that kind of middle gray bar. And that does include parking meter revenue, permits, and citations. Although those parking revenues, did rebound slightly post-pandemic, still obviously below previous projections and have kind of leveled off at around 70% of that pre-pandemic peak. And then the shaded columns on the right, beginning in fiscal 24-25, show the forecast revenues. Parking's forecasted to grow just modestly, predominantly due to increases along with inflation and increases in parking rates, while the state highway funding is projected to be relatively flat, which I think is a common problem we know in this state. So while it's good news that revenues for transportation are stabilizing as opposed to declining, they're certainly not recovering enough to make up for expenditure growth. And Ruth will talk about some of that here in a minute. Parks levy, Peter previewed this. This graph shows the forecast for the Parks Levy Fund. Right now, the fund has a balance of just under 48 million, but that balance is being spent down as expenses continue to exceed revenues. And the red line here represents the net revenue in the fund under the current forecast and spending plan. And so you can see that starts to switch into a negative direction over the forecast, which shows that if parks continued spending at the current pace, the balance would be exhausted by the end of this next fiscal year, fiscal 25-26. It's also important to note that even with what this shows, this forecast actually assumes and includes renewal of the Parks levy at its current rate of 80 cents. And so Peter talked about the compression impacts. Even renewing at that 80 cents still produces lower revenues relative to the forecast. So obviously, just again highlights the need for significant adjustments to expenditures in the upcoming budget to get to a sustainable spot vis-a-vis the levy. And the story of how we got here with the parks forecast is really not that different from the general fund, but just a bit more acute due to the local option and extreme compression relative to other property tax revenues. The growth in expenditures predominantly due to personnel and internal services, and we'll have some slides about that in the expense part. And then the revenue side, obviously, just decreases in both the local option levy and additionally decreases in some general fund discretionary resources. And then last category, just to mention here, is utilities, water, and Bureau of Environmental Services. Dynamics are obviously a little bit different given these two enterprise funds are mostly funded by specific revenue streams, predominantly water and sewer bills to users of those utilities. The Bureau has set rates to recover projected expenditures, and many of those expenditures are fixed in the short term as they're driven by essential operations and by debt service to pay for capital projects that have already been completed or are underway. That said, both water and sewer are facing pressures to manage the level of projected increases in their rates due to significant capital and asset maintenance requirements and due to similar operating expenditure pressures faced by the rest of the city. And then the last slide here is just noting that, like most of the city, there are risks to those forecasted rates, predominantly related to the inflationary increases, and those have a particularly acute impact on the utility bureaus given their large capital construction programs. So that is the end of the revenue flyby summary. And we'll pause to give some space for questions specifically related to that.
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Go for it. Yeah, it's a work session, so just
Sure,
jump in.
okay. Thanks for the presentation, fascinating and sobering. I know we got a lot of information to get through today. Let me do a kind of a lightning round of questions. You started, and we're gonna start with you, Peter. We started out taking a look at population trends. Surprisingly, it looks like our population is going down. I think that's only happened a couple of times since Oregon has been a state. Do we know who is leaving? If we were to break that down by demographics?
It would be very lagged. Anything. So the answer is
Not really.
not. We don't have a great idea. Just because we know we have around the time when people were leaving, we weren't doing great surveys. It was 2020, and then everything's kind of lagged since then, and so. We don't have I think a clear-cut answer. So.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that I hear, we have, representatives from the business community who sort of tell us high-income earners are leaving. And for those of us who live in the real world too, we also just meet our friends and neighbors who say who are kind of at the lower end of the spectrum, and they say they're kind of moving out, outside of our borders because it's expensive too. I'd love to get a better sense of what's happening in that space. Another question which I wanted to have a better understanding of, you presented some employment numbers, and the general message there was that, if you have a job in Portland, you're kind of doing okay, but there are fewer jobs in town. One of the things that we didn't see in your report was data on employment or unemployment numbers. Do we know how we're doing in that space?
Yeah, I just mentioned it, but we're about at the national average. We're at 4%, I think, and so right in line.
Okay, great. Another thing which has jumped out at me, and I think about, it would be, I think, helpful for this and future councils to have data on. We all know that we have a huge or very significant vacancy issue with our office space, especially downtown. Do we have any data that breaks that down by the class of office space? So we have A, B, and C, indicating how fancy it is and how well maintained it is. Is it across the board, or do we see any trends within that?
Yes, we do have that data. Let me get that to you as opposed to trying to remember.
Sure. Well, here, as you dig into that, here's something which I'm authentically trying to figure out. I get the impression that our higher quality office spaces actually occupied fairly well, and it's the sort of office space that is less well maintained or deteriorating that is vacant. And one of the things I'm trying to do is figure out what policy lessons might be there. So I'd encourage, it would be helpful if you can confirm that data. That's what I hear from the,
I believe that is correct. I'll get you the actual data, but
that sounds right.
yeah, that,
Well, if, let's say that is right, do you have any thoughts on policy lessons or implications from that?
I don't, but I will have the one caveat that one of the things that we're also seeing is that those same Class A's are reduced. So you're basic, like from the employer's perspective,
Yeah.
we're getting the highest quality at a pretty low price
Yeah.
because, and so that, that would be an explanation for what is going on.
Right.
In terms of what to do with the other office space or anything, I don't have a thought.
Well, colleagues, I'd encourage, I think that's an interesting trend. There might be some opportunities to leverage improvement here. I'm not smart enough at this hour to know what we should do here, but that's one of the few places where I see us having a chance to leverage. Okay, so bottom line in terms of just the numbers, it looks like our current revenues, we're moving into the next fiscal year. It looks like our expenses, assuming nothing else changes, let's just like carry over our labor contracts. We go into next year, there is a 4% gap between our revenues and our expenses. Roughly, is that I see you're rolling your eyes. Maybe I didn't.
No, I
get that
didn't roll my eyes. Sorry. The expenses were 4% and revenues are below that. The gap, it may be a percentage, but the way that adds up, or less than a percent, but the way that adds up to the actual like cut or constraint amount, it's not like it's that means a 1% cut. It means much more than that. I don't have, yeah.
Well, yeah, and maybe I'll just add, Commissioner, so yeah, fundamentally, general fund revenues on net are going to increase, let's say, 3%. I mean, just kind of pick a number that blends the 4 and 5% growth with the 2.5% property tax growth, and we know revenues are going to increase at 4% or more. Expenses are going to increase at 4% or more, so that drives that delta. It's not quite perfectly linear over the 5-year forecast, so that makes it a little bit messy. And there are some one-time challenges that Bruce is going to talk about as well that sort of widens that gap. So it's not maybe a satisfying, simple math answer, but that's the.
Sure. Well, here's where I'm going with this question. I'm trying to translate it, whatever the gap is, 4%, 5%, 7%. If we were just to kind of translate that into how many dollars that gap is. Is this a $20 million problem? Is this a $100 million problem for next fiscal year?
Closer to 20.
$20 million problem heading into the next fiscal year. Okay, another thing which I hear as today's presentation, and I understand why, is largely focused on the fiscal challenges that, frankly, the enterprise that is the city of Portland faces. So our revenues do not match our expenses. But one of the things that I hear when I go out and talk to our constituents all the time is, Commissioner Maps, Portland has the highest tax rates, amongst the highest tax rates in the entire nation, and I cannot afford this. Do we have any perspective on the tax burden that's currently on our residents and businesses? And can you provide me a way with kind of how to think about this? I'm trying to provide services and I don't have enough cash for it. And I had got, 640,000 people or so who are basically telling us, listen, we cannot pay, anymore for X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, and so since 2020, we added a number of new taxes in the region, not the city of Portland necessarily. Portland added the parks levy, but the city added the preschool for all tax and then the supportive housing services taxes. And with those combined on the income tax side, if you just add it up, would put us towards the top in the nation.
Yeah.
New York would be higher, but that's also at a 20 million or more. The caveat to that is, of course, we don't have a sales tax, and so it's only one piece of the pie. And then just because of where we are in the work session, I just want to point out that none of that is going to the city's general fund.
As an economist, do you have any perspective on how this council or future policymakers should just kind of think about the tax burden on the relative burdens that, public servants in the city face and residents face? I'm awfully afraid that we're squeezing out residents and businesses here. At the same time, one of the reasons why people are fleeing is they're not getting adequate services from the city, or at least they don't feel like that value proposition is at an appropriate equilibrium.
It's a very holistic question. It's not a city of Portland question. It's a regional question. The one thing I'll add from the economist perspective on the tax rates, the way I say it's people moving out happens. It probably, that part of the story is probably talked about a lot more than the other part of the story, which concerns me perhaps more, which is people not moving in.
Yeah.
Because when you're moving a business somewhere, it's hard to relocate. But and that's that would be one of the concerns I have in terms of population growth or things along those lines, or the employee side, where they locate employers, is we see less growth as a result of the tax rates. But in terms of the holistic question you asked, I will defer to Jonas.
Well, I just want to point out the commissioner specifically asked for the economist perspective. No, it's a really great question. I mean, the data is really messy, and so it's really difficult to sort of parse out where those burdens are actually applying.
Yeah.
But it is true that the tax burden is high. I mean, I think I always look at two things in that comparative data. One is the sales tax, which is a huge issue, a huge revenue resource that we don't have most places in this state, that transfers some of that burden to other non-residents who utilize city services, and we don't collect that. And whether that's a blanket sales tax or a more manicured, value-added type of tax, we just don't have that as a resource that most of our peers do have available. The other piece that's a little hard to kind of pull apart, that is sometimes a revenue source that can help supplement, is things like state and federal supports that other entities may have different relationships and access to than we have here in this state. So those are just two, thoughts that are always marinating in my brain, and those are not simple or maybe satisfying solutions to implement in our current environment. But I always kind of caution that comparative data, because it does sometimes obscure some of these other funding pieces that show up kind of in the mix, but outside of an individual taxpayer's burden.
Like I see the city administrators.
I guess just one added point for, probably all elected officials to consider, and that is not just what kind of tax system do we have, but what kind of tax system do you want?
Yeah.
The added taxes from Metro and Multnomah County for high-income earners have made the tax system overall more progressive. And if that's something you're looking for, and obviously a general sales tax is generally regressive. And so there are deeper questions when you're thinking about policy and what you're trying to create, aside from trying to balance the damn budget every year, So there are other questions buried in your questions.
I appreciate that, and I think there's certainly a role for kind of a regional conversation about tax burdens, and I'll give the mayor credit. Certainly within the last year or two, he's tried to form that table, and it's a challenging one to kind of make comprehensive. I'm going to make one more statement, then I'll end with a question and let my colleagues go. You provided some transportation slides. One of the things is the former Peabody guy. One of the cautions I want to make to our budget people and my current colleagues on council and future members of council is, funding in the transportation space really is a partnership between what happens locally, what happens at the state, what happens at the federal level, and I would say there's a lot of uncertainty. I see some real challenges at the state level, and obviously there's some real challenges at the federal level. So, and frankly, none of these challenges, in terms of the range of possibilities, I think are biased towards it working out well for us here locally. So we should be aware of that, and as we move forward, maybe hedge some of our bets. I'm not quite sure what that means, but it kind of explains one of the reasons why I managed or try to intervene in that space in the way I do intervene in that space. Final question for Peter. I'm trying to think about how I think of the changes that have happened to Portland's economy over recent years. Clearly, COVID happened, and our economy looks really different today than it did in 2019. And so I think there are at least two ways to think about it. Our economy caught a cold or caught COVID, and we're recovering and trying to get back to that space. Or another alternative is the COVID moment happened, and our economy has been fundamentally transformed. Frankly, I hear a lot of, especially folks from large businesses, arguing we need to get back to the world that we had in 2019. However, when I take a look at the mix of jobs that are here and the incentives that are here, it feels like something more transformative or profound has kind of changed in our economy. And going back to 2019 is maybe not possible, but I'm not quite sure. It really probably does depend on the mix of businesses that are here and whatnot. Do you have a view on that?
Yeah, no, and that I think summarizes the question facing all economists like me, which is should I expect this to be the new status quo, or are we going to make our way back? And I'll answer that in part from the revenue perspective. My expectation, because I am charged to forecast conservatively, is that it's this is the new status quo. That being said, I don't think that has to be true. And there's certainly a range of possibility where maybe it's not back to the way it was, but it's to something new and better. The economists tend to see the opportunities in the downtimes, recessions, what have you, and it often brings out an opportunity for something new and better. So I don't want to be overly bleak on because the forecast is not based on optimism, that I'm not actually think that there's no chance that happens. But there's no clear-cut answer to your question, because it is the one that challenges all economists in this situation.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate my colleagues creating space for me to ask these questions. I've learned some stuff.
And sorry, I also just would add, I think that I don't lose sight of the fact that this is also, what we're experiencing is also reflective of kind of a national, trend, urban outmigration, obviously homelessness issues. That's not unique to the city of Portland. Work from home, transforming the way businesses operate. So I just want to also acknowledge that while we're dealing with our acute, problem within the city, it is also reflective of things that are happening elsewhere in the country.
I appreciate that, but I'll to push back a little bit. It's also the case that Portland seems to be recovering more slowly in some important spaces than almost any other city in the country. All right, thank you.
I have a few questions. So first, I just want to have a comment. Well, first, thank you for the presentation. It was very sobering, to use the same words. The data regarding tourism and hotels, it makes it just all the more impactful about putting our shoulder to the wheel around activation downtown. So just want to make that comment. And then going back to the tax credits for re-upping on the leases, I think we have maybe the total number might be around 70 or so, or 75. And is there a way that you can do that analysis and follow up later about just checking to see if that made the difference? And if there's anything materially different than the 70 or 75, it'd be great to hear that.
Yeah, and I would, I believe they have until the end of January to apply. So I would actually expect most of them to come towards the end of January. I think just because they kind of push it to the last moment as they're preparing. Yes, outside of directly surveying the firms, it would be hard to say whether or not, and assuming that they were completely honest,
Yeah.
that this was the reason that they stayed, it would be hard to make that
Okay.
inference. The way you could see it is if it could be a contributor if that sobering chart that I showed in terms of office space downtown like started to flatline.
Yeah.
That could be an indicator that there was some success there, but
Okay.
I don't know if we'll be able to get trustworthy data in terms of like how it's a complicated question.
Yeah, I mean, definitely want to celebrate that it's happening, but also just for learning and
Yeah.
for reapplying it forward.
Can I,
The other
sorry.
question.
Oh, sorry. Can I just jump in with an unsolicited plug there too? I think like that policy is just an excellent example of where setting it up with an evaluation built in on the front end would be a really great idea, because then you would be able to answer that question. And it's just really hard to set up an evaluation once the policy
Yeah.
is already in place and actually be able to tease out the kinds of questions you're asking. So it's just a
Great
plug for
idea.
future
Yeah.
for the next council. Like when you're thinking about a specific policy change like that, where you're like, we really want to impact this line. Are we going to, like, we want to do this thing, we're not sure if it's going to work. There are ways to set it up ahead of time to say, like, what would we be looking for to know if it's working and how can we measure that? It's just a great case study of where evaluation is super valuable.
Can I ask
Excellent
a quick question on that? What would have been an example for that? I mean, because there's a lot of incentives on those type of, I mean, that's not an unusual type of incentive. I'm just trying to figure out what we could have done differently that specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting some baseline data, probably like a baseline survey, would have been something I would look for just as a like, okay, here's the baseline. I think, it depends on the policy.
But what would you be surveying? Someone's expectation as to whether they want to re-up where they're at, and then watching the behaviors versus, I'm just trying to figure out like what realistic input you could give to set a baseline to assess the success of the measure there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if on the fly, I'd probably look at landlords and survey landlords, but I think also looking at some other comparative data that you're tracking the same comparisons before and after in terms of occupancy or vacancy rates, I think is another way to go about it, just to set it up intentionally to say like, all right, this is our group of comparators. We're not going to change this. We're going to look at them before and after. I mean, if you really wanted to get fancy about it, you could create some sort of randomness in how the thing rolls out. Streets 1 to 4 and whatever. I'm making it up, obviously, but like you could set it up to like randomly kind of roll out in phases, and then you could compare across the way you set it up. So, I mean, it would be a longer conversation ahead of time, and that, like our office could support in thinking about that ahead of time. But I do think there's different levels of, depending on how big the policy is, you would put more or less effort into setting up the evaluation. For this, I'd probably do something like just a comparison group and maybe a survey. But for a bigger policy, you might want to set it up more robustly.
I just have a couple more questions. So also, can you give me just a quick overview of what are the plans for the garages closed downtown, and has that been discussed or?
Commissioner Rubio, I don't know if we have any PBOT folks in the room. I know that we're actually planning to open some up again. The one on 4th plans to open again. Mike, do you want to jump in here? I also
I
don't
had
want to
actually
get ahead.
just heard yesterday, they're preparing to reopen.
So I got good news here. Crime in our garages is down dramatically, and we're opening up the garage on 4th again in a matter of weeks or months. I'm not sure the exact timeline. So I think that particular experiment worked pretty well.
Okay, great. And one last question. So the total outlook that you've been talking about, this was assuming that the IGA was intact with Multnomah County. Has anything changed on that outlook? Does it make it the same? Does it make it worse? Like if things were materially to change in the budget?
Yeah,
with
I'm going to
operations costs.
talk about the sort of fiscal cliff slide later, and that's where it would come in. It doesn't really impact the revenue side at all. It's really about the fiscal cliff. I will say just at the outset, though, we have not costed that yet, so there's no, we're waiting for whatever direction.
Yeah, and just a reminder, it's a great question. There are a number of conversations in motion, both currently and assumedly with the incoming council, that will change this dynamic. So the current forecast, and Ruth will transition in a moment to talk about expenditures, essentially assumes kind of status quo. We're doing what is currently appropriated and continuing to do that. And so those future and upcoming policy adjustments will impact that.
But in general, are you expecting it just to then be neutral or negative impact?
I don't want to say at this point, just because we haven't costed it, we have to go through the IGA and
Okay.
kind of figure it all out. So I don't want to, yeah. Sorry. We'll happily follow up. We're just kind of waiting for what the direction is, because it depends what the direction is as to how we would cost it.
Some questions. I guess first an observation on the San Francisco County trends and versus Multnomah County. You know, historically, we've been a bit of a real estate arbitrage, both for headquarters and certainly for residents. And so that's a really bad headwind if San Francisco County is struggling that much too, in terms of, on the one hand, folks playing the real estate arbitrage as they often do from Seattle, San Francisco, and LA to move to Portland. So that's concerning. Maybe it's also a silver lining that relative to San Francisco, you know, we're not alone. And I guess I'll leave it as that it's mostly bad news, I think, for us that San Francisco County is struggling that much, but maybe we can tweak it into a competitive advantage. I want to get back to a piece that I think Commissioner Maps was getting at, but I'm going to go up a level. So when we talk about revenue architecture over a longer period of time, I mean, you kind of already said, but I just want to emphasize the biggest gap we have is a lack of a sales tax. Is that right? Or is there other, you know, when you look at pure cities and how they stabilize revenue or assure stabilized revenue, is there other big tools that we're not currently at our disposal?
Yeah, I guess I would say, I mean, sales tax is the obvious one. And where for many, many years we are an outlier. You know, it's a great question, and I am in touch with, you know, peers nationally, and I will do a little bit more due diligence. I mean, I'm not aware of anything that's like a big, you know, this is going to increase our revenues by 10 or 20%. It tends to be other little tools that are around the margins, which we implement now. You know, things like adjustments to transient lodging taxes, those sorts of initiatives, which we should pursue. I mean, anything, even if it's around the edges, is valuable. So it's a good question. And Peter, I don't know if you've got any other.
No, the big obvious one, sales tax. There have been innovative new taxes that have been, I mean, there's cell phone tax, which wouldn't bring in a large amount of revenue because you can only tax the cell phone, you can't tax the data. I think Chicago has implemented a tax on streaming services.
Well, and I want to be more precise than I'm really talking about from an architecture perspective. What's the right, you know, what are the cities that have been able to build some immunity to, you know, economic variability most effectively? What are, is there lessons we can learn? I know every locality is a different context, and where Mike was going, and, you know, there's embedded political decisions in which revenue opportunities you go after, and I fully recognize that. One of our tremendous challenges here is how much revenue creation is the result of ballot measures that failed to take into account architecture. They're selling taxpayers on one-off, I don't, venerable goals, but they don't think through like the impact in terms of total burden to taxpayer of all the things we're doing, much less how it crowds out other opportunities to raise revenue. When taxpayers finally said, we've had enough, right? And so I don't even know if it's possible, but thinking about what peer cities do to sort of, to at least have that conversation. There's been conversation around taxpayer burden and recently that's been very helpful. And we know we're overtaxed, but we also have to have stabilized revenue sources for core, functions. And it'd be great to figure out how we can inform that conversation. Yeah, if you have thoughts on that.
The one context I would add, when just talking about the general fund, not talking about the overall tax burden, is prior to COVID, one of the things that Moody's and others would highlight about our general fund architecture is that we actually do have a relatively well-balanced revenue stream. And that's part of the reason why we're not talking about declines. Some cities would be talking about declines at times like this. Our property taxes are very stable, and then we've had good growth in business license taxes, even though it's more volatile. We have a somewhat of a decent architecture such that it has been highlighted as a positive in our bond ratings. Again, post-COVID and everything going on with property taxes, it's just this particular event, and the particular results are particularly bad. In the same way that if you had a sales tax post 2007, you would be having this exact same discussion from a different city's perspective. So that it's a great question when you're talking about when you're talking about the taxpayer burden side of things, how the taxpayer is paying, how their architecture works, and where their money is going and what they're getting for it. But in terms of the general fund specifically, I wouldn't say we have a bad architecture. We have a good mix of different revenue sources that are facing a challenging time in the coming years.
Yeah, and just to add to that, thank you, Peter, for that context on the sales tax, because I agree that's the volatility. And so it is both the sort of the revenue architecture and also sort of the expense management, which is those other jurisdictions that have sales tax, but it's more volatile, have different kind of tools and mechanisms that they use on the expenditure side to manage through that volatility. So it's both. I mean, ultimately, it's the revenue architecture and kind of optimally allocating that among payers into that system within statutory requirements, but also continuing to manage that expenditure side through that volatility as it exists.
Can I add one other concept into this conversation really quickly? Is the salience of the tax. Like, one of the things that's important when you're thinking about designing tax policy is how people perceive the tax. And the good thing about things like business license tax, frankly, is it's not very salient. To the extent that it's factored into our prices, it's a little hard to say probably, but the fact that you have multinational corporations paying what's a teeny tiny drop in the bucket for them to the city of Portland, that's actually a pretty good design from a tax salience perspective. I think on the other hand, things like, high income tax brackets are much more salient. Whatever you think about the policy, it's just much more salient to people. And so there's a lot more attention paid to it just because they notice it, as opposed to being able to raise, the same amount of revenue through some other mechanism that, like a business tax, that might be less salient to people.
And corporate surcharge and cannabis, would those be two taxes that have pretty comparable tendencies to a sales tax? Or I'm just trying to place them in sort of a and cannabis is a single product, so it's kind of, you're dealing with micro things there, but
I would separate out cannabis just because in the same way that, there's taxes on liquor and cigarettes and things like that. The clean energy surcharge is more like when you're forecasting that revenue, you would probably forecast it in a similar way, but it is such a small subset of firms that have to pay that tax that it is fundamentally different. And whereas a sales tax it's more clear that it's immediately added on to, it's on the receipt. There's less obvious evidence that for the clean energy surcharge that every single firm paying it is passing it on.
Last question on permit revenue trends versus projections. This has been a little bit of a falling knife for us, at least in my time on council. Whatever we thought it was going to be, it keeps coming in worse, it seems. Since the last time we've gone deep, is that continuing? I mean, are we underperforming updated projections, or is it a better or about what we're last projected?
Hang on, I'm trying to get a slide on it. One sec. I think we don't quite have enough data in this fiscal year to really be able to, give you a good answer to that question. But I think maybe there's signs that it's improving a little bit, but it's still not looking great. Sorry, I'm not going to be able to pull it up right this second, but we will send it to you after
My question is
this.
just against last projections. Like, are we feeling like last projections are trending reasonably closer? Is there any material deviance or?
And I don't want to speak on behalf of Permitting Bureau, but my perception is that it's relatively in line, but that the outlook may not be necessarily better. So like how things are going so far, the difficulty is large projects drive so much, and it's so they might not see as much in the pipeline as in large projects as they would hope, but the past few months may be matching projections. And so I think that would be my interpretation, is that the outlook is probably still not great, but we're kind of where we thought we would be.
Okay, got it. I'm done.
Commissioner Gonzalez, could I quickly ask a follow-up question on the permitting question? So it looks like we have we got a lot of stuff going on, but I did have a permitting question. So it looks like we have about a $20 million gap currently between our revenues and expenses in the permitting space. We got about $25 million in reserve. What happens if current trends continue? How do you work that out?
Just looking to see if there's anyone from PP&D in the.
Donnie's coming.
Hey, folks.
Don.
Donnie Oliveira for the record, Deputy City Administrator for Community and Economic Development. So Commissioner, if your question is, how do we address the fact that we have a $20 million gap and a reserve that's approaching $25 million?
Yeah, something like that. And that's kind of where we are in real time. So either if that gap continues, it seems like something hits
So
a brick wall pretty quickly.
well, we've hit the brick wall, Commissioner, to be perfectly frank.
Yeah.
The Bureau has an existing reserve policy that we've been delaying as long as possible to trigger, which would set off a series of actions that would largely look at potentially eliminating vacancies, furloughing, potentially layoffs, all things that have to be negotiated with our labor partners, of course. But the fact of the matter is that Bureau is we're at the precipice of making that decision around activating the reserve policy. Just to Peter's point, the forecast has been accurate that it's not great.
So it's so you guys, for the most part, aren't in the general fund, but things don't balance out. Are you going to have to make a pitch to the general fund?
Well, for this fiscal year, the general fund contributed $2 million to sort
Okay.
of give us a little bit of a buffer, which is, largely a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
But yeah, so two things are going to happen simultaneously. One is we are looking at updating a reserve policy, also looking at the overall long-term health and sustainability of the revenues for that bureau. It's not sustainable. And then practically speaking, yes, we have to address the current fiscal climate and our expenses, which are not aligned.
Thanks. Before I let you go, I also want to praise you. Like, one of the things that I have been really impressed at the Permitting Bureau's use of modeling to project revenues and expenses and staffing levels and whatnot. So I think kind of across all the bureaus that at least I've followed pretty closely, you guys have been the most sophisticated in the space in that you literally do regressions and whatnot to figure out where you want to be. And it's also the case that every 10 years or so, the model kind of implodes. I don't know what to do with that, other than, I do think kind of going back in and really taking a look at the assumptions that are baked into our modeling practices might make some sense.
That's correct, Commissioner. First of all, thank you for the acknowledgement. PP&D has done a great job at
Yeah.
modeling, and the whole system is flawed in that, yes, the good times, the prosperous times have to generate so big of a reserve that it catches us in these downturns. This downturn has just been longer than anticipated and was more dramatic. So the prior reserve buildup wasn't enough to catch it. So we're at this moment of reflection, and realities, we have to address it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hi, I've had my hand up and I just want to ask a couple questions. First, thank you, Peter, for the level setting. It was a great synthesis of everything that all of us have had information about for the last 6 months, so I appreciate the summary. It was very well done. And yes, I, of course, talk a lot about the downtown being so important for the rest of the city. It's like the artery of the heart that pumps out to the rest of the city, so this has been grim for some time. But I didn't see, and maybe there it's not available, but the main streets and neighborhoods, they've had vacancy rates that are quite high as well throughout the city. Do we have data on that? So it's like the storefronts and neighborhoods.
I believe yes, but maybe not to the granularity that that would be super useful. I can look.
Please do,
further.
and if you have it, it'd be great. And if not, we'll have to figure out how to get that tool. I'll go right ahead. One reason I love economics is because it's a social science, and it really is about reputation, moods, and a feel. And so I think we have to just not be that surprised up here that your greatest strength is often becomes your greatest weakness if you don't take care of it. So Portland's X factor in the economy forever has been our livability. It's because it's beautiful. People want to live here. They want to access parks. They want to go to our public schools. They see it as a place to raise families. And when people don't feel safe, and with our humanitarian crisis on the streets, let's get honest here. That's what is below all of this data, in my opinion. And so I think we have to keep connecting the dots and not pretend that they're not connected at all. And so I just want to insert this into the narrative as we speak today. Would you agree with some of those assessments? Like, that's why I wanted to look at comparisons and why it was important to pull out Multnomah County, and why it was important to ask if Clark County was in the metro, because those numbers are really different. So Multnomah County and Portland is special when you look at that data. And I hope that we continue to focus more granularly on that.
Yeah, and that's again why I highlighted it in that data. I had it's the 7 counties, and frankly, it's not just it's not just Clark County. Like Washington County and Clackamas even are doing better than the city core. In terms of reputation, the baseline way I look at that when thinking
And
about
we just
things-
had Travel Portland here last week, so we were able to listen to their report.
Yeah, and I always look at migration trends. That's people moving in and people moving out. It tells you a lot, and how they make those decisions. It's hard to say. We don't survey them when they move in.
Last time we experienced this type of loss was during the timber transition in the early 80s, and that was statewide. So this is very special, and we must continue to focus on how the different parts connect to bring our economy back. Thanks.
Great. So thanks for all that great dialogue and questions. We'll hopefully have a little bit more time as we go forward. I think we're going to hand off to Ruth to talk about citywide expenditures. We might shortcut this just a little bit to make sure we can get through the remainder of this info. But Ruth, I'll let you launch.
Yeah, I'll go quickly, but I do want to spend some time on expenditures because it is actually in the sense of just balancing our revenues and expenditures, probably the bigger problem comparatively to the revenue decline is the expenditure increases. I'm going to go through a couple of major categories of expenditures, but this is all expenditures in all funds citywide. They've grown an average of 8% since fiscal year 15-16. Now this includes the utilities, it includes capital, so it's everything. But you can see the two big ones at the bottom are internal services and personnel, which have grown the most quickly. So those are the two I'm going to spend a little more time on. Just quickly before I jump in on personnel, just keep in mind, these are totals. So for everything I'm going to talk about, this includes both an increase in the sort of price per unit, as it were, and an increase in the quantity. We are both buying more and we are buying more expensive things. And so that's what contributes to the cost growth. So if you look at personnel, you can see we have more positions than we had in 10 years ago. If you look at the green, obviously the yellow is casuals. That's where you see the notable impact of COVID. Like lifeguards are included in there, for example. But that's just to hit on the point that the number of people we employ has gone up. This is the cost per employee. These are actual costs and they're per filled regular positions. So the casuals are not reflected in here. It's also not, there's a separate slide on public safety because the dynamics are sort of different. So what you can see here is the dotted line would be is sort of the inflation adjusted cost if it grew with inflation since 2014-15. So it has obviously grown more than that. Actually, so when you break it down between benefits and salaries and wages, benefits have actually grown more quickly than salaries and wages, although salaries and wages have both grown. And then you can also see sort of the effect of COVID here in 2020 to 2021. It was fairly flat, and then that has picked back up since then significantly. And then this is the public safety version of the same chart. The big difference here being obviously the overtime expenses in the dark green and the premium pay is higher. But similar trends, their benefits have actually grown even higher relative to salaries and wages because they have higher PERS rates and they have, PPA has its own health fund. Now I'm going to switch over to internal services. So this is the other, this is actually the fastest growing category of expense. They've grown an average of 9.7. These are billings internally to city bureaus. They've grown an average of 9.7% per year over the past 5 years. And so the question is why? And I think this is another place where it's important to hammer home this idea that we are both paying more for each thing we buy and we are buying more things. Just simply speaking, we buy more computers, more laptops, because we have more people and we need more computers. And also each computer we buy is more expensive. The interesting thing when you break it out kind of by provider is you can see that yellow line is facilities. That's largely because of the Portland building and the Vanport building. So I think the other big factor in here is that there are like big ticket items that we buy that add to costs over a long period of time. Obviously, we're paying the debt financing costs on the Portland building, and those got added in. Bureaus started paying those in, I think, fiscal year 2021. So that's a big decision that we made that, shows up, and that's part of one of the drivers of our costs. Other sort of smaller ticket items, but things that add up are things like software. So software as an industry, the costs have grown faster than general inflation. We are buying more of them, more licenses, and we are buying more sort of non-standard things that cost more. So it's the quantity, the type of thing, and then the expense of the thing that we're buying have grown. And then likewise, similar trend on vehicles, that's another big driver of internal services expense. And then there's things like security, where we have to respond to events that are sort of outside of, or conditions that are sort of outside of the city's control, but that it costs money to pay for.
Ruth,
Yeah.
real quickly, can you just give me, I'm puzzling about your Y scale. So we're using 2016-17 as, why'd you format it like this? And what's it telling
This
me?
is just sort of, I'm just using a base year to separate out the sort of how fast things have grown compared to a base year. The reason I formatted like this is because if you just look at like a stacked bar. It's just kind of hard to see.
Okay.
It just shows you the actual, like, the sort of impact now compared to in 2016, 17 of these particular things in our budget. The year over year is just messy, right? It goes up and down. It's messy. It's hard to see.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Okay, real quickly on capital, obviously the biggest
Sorry,
ones.
Ruth, on that,
Yeah.
could you just explain facilities again to me? It seems odd that it's gone up so much.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really is the costs of the Portland building and the Vanport building. So you'll see it actually on this next slide on capital
The
expenditures.
private market's getting rid of their spaces like ours ballooned, so
Right, I mean, having.
common sense reaction is that, yeah.
Well, just to
Yeah.
be clear, though, that's essentially a capitalized or amortized expense of a previous investment decision. These aren't new incremental.
No, I get it,
Correct.
but I thought it was
Yes.
important for the public record to explain why that one has ballooned so quickly.
How much
And I
is
thought
that?
it was important to hear about the Portland building and the Vanport building. We don't talk about that very often.
Right.
Fair point. Can I ask a follow-up question? What is that? Well, I'm just taking a step back. Are those amortized costs or those capitalized costs? What's our terminology here for the?
I mean, they were debt financed capital expenditures.
Yeah, so those are just debt, amortizing, debt service, annual debt service costs associated with the capital financing of that.
With a cap, what does that translate into a per year?
I don't have the per year number. We can get it to you.
Yeah, just curious ballpark what that is for each.
And I think, Ruth, correct me if I'm wrong, I want to be clear about our answer. That yellow line on the previous graph, the big jump is the capital for the Portland building in Vanport, but it's not the only element of that line. There's also the ongoing daily maintenance expenditures that get allocated to the users of the building also.
Totally.
Yeah,
We
just
hear a
wanted
lot
to-
about that from some of
wanna
the
be
bureaus.
clear.
I just wanted to, so that we understand what's being driven by prior decisions that we no longer have control over and that really the next council is not going to have any control over. That's a bucket of that versus the things that are decisions we're making each year that we could choose differently, as could the next council. That's what I'm trying to parse out there.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, given this kind of line of questioning, I just flagged too, I mean, there's a macro level story that makes sense that you see in this chart too, which is inflation in most areas increased post-pandemic.
Yeah.
And so you see that happening here. It is, as Ruth said, both quantity and amount, but this also just is indicative of the fact that inflationary costs and pressures have risen generally post-pandemic. And you can also see that reflected here in addition to that one-time spike.
And I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole. Maybe I take some of this offline, but when you're essentially amortizing the cost of the debt. So what was the debt instrument and what was the term of it, or is it?
Yeah, so I'm gonna speak a little out of school because I wasn't here when this happened, but it was bond financed, at least in large portion, and I believe it was a 20-year amortization with essentially equal annual payments. Now, there's other funding components that participated in that, but it's effectively a 20-year term of repayment.
And that is what we're budgeting per year? Is that?
For that slice of expense.
Yeah, the
Got
debt
it.
service, if you will, at that point,
Got it.
it gets allocated as a fixed cost, basically over the 20-year term of the.
Makes perfect sense. And if you were to guess, and I just ballpark what percentage of this, rise in the yellow line is attributable to that?
Yeah, we can get it to you.
We'd love to see that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Sure, yeah. Okay, so yeah, this is the capital. So you can see the capital expenditure in those years. This is the capital side of that, not the debt side, right? This is the actual capital expenditure. You can also see the water and sewer projects in here, obviously contributing to most of the growth in the capital expenditures over the last 3 years. So that's kind of the other, big piece of the pie in terms of our expenditures citywide. I'm going to talk now about one-time funding. So I think this is really important to understand from the perspective of where are we in terms of budget guidance and what do we have to do next year. Just for this first slide on this just shows you like the overall magnitude of what we're looking at. So this is all one-time funding that was either from federal grants, CARES, and ARPA during, in response to the pandemic, and then general fund one time. Much of that general fund one time is the result of things like, the what turned out to be excess payments from business license taxes, the sort of amounts that showed up above the forecast. There's also always some general fund one time in the budget, so that's expected. But this magnitude is pretty remarkable. So $734 million over 5 years between both the federal funding and the general fund one time. And you can kind of see, when we talk about a fiscal cliff, right? Like there's this mountain, we're coming down the other side. To the mayor's point, we're trying to create as smooth of a ramp as possible, both through looking at what expenditures need to be truly ongoing, and then are there any kind of like what bridge funding can we use so that both continues the one time, but it also means that you're not just falling off a cliff on the other side of the mountain. So the next slide here takes that 24, 25 bar and looks at a slightly more granular level within that. These are the largest decision packages in the current year adopted budget that have general fund one-time funding. Obviously the biggest one is shelter services. This is for SRV and TAS operations. This does not show other funding for any of these programs in here. Obviously fire has a whole bunch of ongoing. This is just the one time. The other caveat to this slide is not all of these amounts are amounts we would have to pay next year. So that's part of the work of the budget process, is to figure out what do we actually need. There's charter transitions on here that shouldn't be an ongoing need. So I think I'm going to just quickly turn to now thinking about 25, 26. So before I get into these specific drivers, I want to go back to Peter's point about the forecast. And he's looking at forecasted expenditures versus forecasted revenues, but those expenditures are only the things that council has already adopted through some ordinance, a budget ordinance. He's not looking at anything that's on this chart, right? He's not looking at stuff that has one-time funding that is truly ongoing. And so what we need to do to get through to next year is solve both of those problems. There is both what we call sort of the forecast gap, and there's this other problem. So think about the forecast gap as roughly 20 million. That's going to move a little. And then these other problems. And I don't have a great estimate for you because some of these things are still unknown, but I'm going to run through a few of them. So the first is the health benefit rate increases. So the amounts that were adopted in the current year budget are in the forecast as ongoing expenses, but we don't know what the 25-26 increase will be yet. So that's kind of a risk that's hanging out there, that could come in above what's in the forecast. And that would drive. So the amounts for 25 for the current year, the increase that we experienced this year is already driving reductions as part of the forecast gap, and then there could be additional reductions on top of that if it comes in higher than what we're expecting. The next is labor bargaining. In the forecast, there are no costs above COLA included, period. So depending on how those contracts come in, those would drive additional reductions on top of what's already in the forecast if they come in above COLA. The third is the public safety operating gap. I lumped together sort of 3 or 4 things that are on the fiscal cliff side into the public safety operating gap, but they are basically the one time that's supporting the police bureau, the fire bureau, the Office of Violence Prevention, Portland Street Response, and Ceasefire. When you add all of that one time together, it's about $20 million. And so the gap for next year is something in the $20 to $25 million range for public safety as a whole, just for current operations. That's not like no changes to operations. And then on the legal obligations side, the flood safety benefit fee is already in the forecast, so that's driving reductions. And then there's additional sort of liabilities out there I have ADA compliance on the slide. We talked about that a lot. And then things like if we increase the police bureau's budget, we have to add to the 5% for the Community Police Oversight Board. That's required by that ballot measure. So those are kind of the big things. There's obviously, this is sort of a short list. There's a long list too. But these are like the big things to think about when we're thinking about how do we get through the 25-26 budget. And I think it's just super important for everyone to understand there is both a structural problem in terms of our allocated expenses and our forecasted revenues, and there are other expenses hanging out there that we are going to need to take care of that are not already accounted for in that forecast. So that brings us to guidance. So what we're looking at right now, so the plan for the mayor's budget guidance is to come out later this week. And what we're looking at right now is basically at least 5%. Now, there's a couple of reasons that we're not being more specific at this point. One is that the forecast is not done. So Peter's still, as he said at the outset, updating those numbers. There's BLT refunds still coming in. There's work to be done on refining that. And so that could change a little bit. The other reason is the other expenditures bucket. In order to figure out how much we need to cut, we need to decide, roughly speaking, how much of that stuff that we haven't yet accounted for do you want to pay for? And so we need to be able to put reductions on the table in order to solve for some of those additional expenses. And then the other things like the labor contracts are another kind of big unknown. So we're saying at least 5%, probably expect an update in December. Obviously, the other big thing out there is the election. Just hammering home the point that any new funding needs mean we have to reduce somewhere else. On the non-general fund side, there are sort of larger gaps, obviously, that we talked about in parks, permitting, and PBOT. There will be some utility rate guidance to, contain the rate of increase in the utilities, and then some internal services guidance similarly to, help alleviate some of the pressure for the customer bureaus. Pass it to Jonas.
Great. So, Council, we have, I think, maybe 3 or 4 more slides to move to talk about the budget process, which we want to make sure we have time to do. But I can pause maybe again to see if there's any questions on that hour of content that Ruth just walked through in about 15 minutes.
Is it possible to go back high level? So you've identified 3 big buckets in a sense. That's the way I did it. So we have the forecast gap, and then we have the one-time items and the pressure gaps risk section. Is that a fair characterization of the 3 main pieces? So ballpark, what are those 3 numbers right now that we're talking about?
Yeah, so I think of it as roughly, again, this is going to change, so ballpark.
Totally understand.
$20 million on the forecast gap, roughly $40 million on the fiscal cliff.
Okay.
And then really, I don't have a number on the sort of health benefits and labor bargaining increases at this point. So those are, in my mind, those are kind of the 3 big buckets that we are thinking about. And so, just the first 2 is about $60 million. And then that third sort of bargaining related bucket, I don't have a number for right now.
So on healthcare benefit rate increases though, so we have the 8% right now, and we've what's our historic or more recent projections typically been?
So we don't have an updated projection from the sort of consultants for the health benefit increases. I think last year the number they came in at was something like 15%, if I'm recalling correctly. And I think, that would be like to continue with the current, benefits essentially, if you made no changes to the plan. And I think they were forecasting similar increase for 25-26.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying
But that's as of sort of last October.
I'm just trying to figure out if the 8% you have listed here is actually understating the real risk to the budget at this
I
point.
think that's,
Commissioner,
that's the open
I
question.
think it is likely that it's understating it. Labor Management Committee, the Benefits Committee that you heard from pretty late in the process last year, have been working continuously through the summer and the fall on looking at, and we have asked them to look at scenarios up to 15% on plan design. How could they look at different plan designs, options, depending on what those numbers do come in at? So we're working on it, but I'd expect the number to be higher than 8 for sure.
And just so I understand the hydraulics of what you've presented here, so you're mentioning an ongoing 8%. We actually think that may be reasonably understated. But when we're thinking about the visualizing the gaps right now, what does the 8% translate to? Just if we were to isolate that line item, and then we can.
So on the general fund side, I think it was about $4.5 million. Do you remember the number?
I think it was 4.5 to pay for last year ongoing, and then next year's 8% was probably an additional couple million. So
Okay.
that was probably 6 of the 20.
And that's just the general fund side. Keep in mind, you know, the utilities and
Ratepayers.
VDOT and
Okay,
everybody
got
else
it.
are paying too.
And then the last question on this slide. So public safety operations gap, when we're making some investments and seeing some progress, at least on managing of overtime, is your current projections right now that you're going to see any savings there next year or not?
I mean, savings in terms of like the cost to continue at the current service level, essentially.
Yes. So are you projecting increased straight line staffing for fire and police with current service levels in your assumptions on that line or not?
Yeah, so the assumptions on that line are really the number is just looking at the one time that's expiring. If I don't know if anyone from it looks like Nathan's on the line. Do you want to talk about kind of projections in terms of staffing and cost for staffing next year?
The 20 to 25 is just the one time in that line?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is Nathan Leamy. I manage the budget strategy and performance team for the public safety service area. In terms of the gaps we see here, some of these are genuinely one time. You know, the funding we have for OVP, ceasefire, and Portland Street Response. I think the core of your question is really around the overtime dollars that were allocated for fire and police. On the fire side, you might remember we've added additional staff to the Fire Bureau, which has shown a net decrease in overtime thus far in the first 3 months of this year. We anticipate that will continue to go down if they're able to maintain staffing levels. One of the big unknowns that we currently have for both police and fire is there's an advantageous retirement period coming up in November here, where the number of separations we'll see in each bureau is still to be determined. So that could shift and mean that we wouldn't see those reductions continuing on. And the Police Bureau, this is continuing the current authorized staffing level that they have, but we are beginning to see a turnaround in terms of the total number of sworn officer positions who are off probation. The Bureau has been doing a lot of hiring over the past few years. Folks who were hired 2 years past are now completing their probation, and they're being able to be out on force as a normal police officer. And that has the potential to reduce the amount of overtime, but we haven't yet seen those changes take place. That'll probably wouldn't happen until mid calendar year 2025.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, I think in some of these investments we projected it would take a couple of years to see the general fund benefits really start to net out, right, as you get folks through the pipeline. I just was trying to get ballparking to see if there might be some upside in here that's not fully baked into your slide. The OVP, PSR, and ceasefire are entirely different problems to solve for, and that's its own very difficult conversation to be had. But just that baseline public safety. And the last I heard in BOAC, we continue to see really pretty good reduction in overtime utilization. It's a much smaller scale, than police and fire. But I guess my main point is that this council has taken some interventions going back to BOAC, and then with Portland Fire, police is a little different because we're trying to raise the service level in a sense, but that is going to have a positive budgetary impact in the coming years. I just hope people don't lose, that those are multi-year investments, and sometimes you got to take the pain up front in your pipeline, in your academies, to get the savings longer term on overtime utilization.
Yeah, I do think it's important, though, to recognize I don't see the cost of the service for any of those three coming down. I mean, BOEX, I
In
think.
terms of inflation, it's going to be, right, you're
Well, and
out
right,
of
I mean,
overtime.
there's a PPA contracts coming up in 2026, fire in 2027. So, those factors are going to keep pushing it up. I think, to Nathan's point, you may have more people out on the street, doing the work, and that's a good thing to not have that be paid on overtime. But I don't, I don't really, I think it's more of a delta, a fairly small delta in the overall gap that is out there for those bureaus, which is, for police alone, I think something in the $10 million range just for next year.
And when I want so that people understand when you say that 10 million, so that's essentially preserving current service levels.
Yeah.
With current projections on pipeline of new police officers coming in, we're talking a 10 million gap.
Yeah.
That's not in your first sort of slide.
Correct.
That's essentially what you're talking about here, just in police.
Correct.
And that's no improvements in service levels.
Correct.
Okay.
I have a question. I'm curious about more like big picture historical context here. When's the last time that the budget was this constrained that you know of? And maybe saying it another way, has a mayor ever proposed more than 5% budget cuts? And is that going to be enough?
Yeah. So multi-part question. Peter can answer too. Mayor can answer too. He did propose more than 5% in 2020, and it was a 5.6% across the board, including police and fire in 2020 in response to the pandemic. There were also other things in addition to that cut that helped make up the full gap. So I don't know, Mayor, if
It's
you want
another 3%, I believe, wasn't it, for non-designated bureaus?
I think it was taken in a bunch of,
It was a lot.
yeah. And it wasn't necessarily, it was furloughs and all sorts of different things along those lines to kind of meet
Right.
that.
There was no COLA, no merit. So there were other, other measures that I can get you. We had a slide at the time that showed kind of how the mayor closed the budget gap. So yeah, we can.
That would be great to see.
I can share that. But yeah, I mean, I think that is the last time that we've had anything close to this. I don't know before that, looking at Mike.
Well, yeah, and I think coming out of the Great Recession was a challenging time for the city. I don't know the exact numbers, but it was a challenge. I think another thing for the public to understand, and I know the council understands this intensely, and that is we're running a significant number of very expensive programs that did not exist in 2020. And so, and they're serving the public and dealing with a crisis on our streets. And so they're perfectly justified expenditures, but they're putting a lot of pressure that didn't exist years ago. So.
And are these things that will impact our credit rating at all?
I mean, we hope not, right? I mean, to the extent that we're able to identify a plan to manage through the moment, that we would anticipate being able to protect that credit rating. We have used fund balance and drawn that down, and so there are little moments of decisions that start to put that conversation at risk. We would certainly manage in a way that we would hope to maintain it, and again, I'd sort of cycle back a little bit to many of the challenges that we face are not unique. And so, credit ratings do take into account that comparability. As long as we continue to pay our bills, don't run deficits, I think we're probably still in a pretty good position. But yeah, it's certainly a conversation we want to keep on the forefront of our minds.
And then I realized I didn't answer your other question. Is 5% enough? No, it's not. That's why we're saying at least 5%. We can tell you right now because the 5% is sort of best case scenario just to close the forecast gap. That's it. Everything else that's on this list is more. So no, it's not enough.
I want to jump in here and issue a warning to future members of council and future mayor. And that has to do with the impact that hiring freezes have on our ability to deliver services. I think at least 3 of us came in roughly in 2021 when we had a hiring freeze, which I do believe impacted the public safety spaces. I recognize the mayor kind of, I think, wisely exempted the public safety bureaus from cuts this year. I think one of the struggles that I experienced in my 4 years on this council is we had stopped hiring specifically for 911 operators for a bit because of budget constraints. Then we saw that impact our ability to actually pick up the phone and get an ambulance to you or a fire truck or a cop. Eventually, we changed things around and started hiring again, but there's this 18-month training gap, which was very painful and frankly very dangerous, I think, for the city of Portland. At least under Mayor Wheeler's current guidance, we are not replicating that same dynamic, but I don't know who's going to be here in 6 months, and I just sure hope that you're aware that there is, specifically in the public safety space, there is this lag, which really stretches for about 2 years. You should be very careful in how you go about, or the impacts that your directives on hiring take, because it kind of echoes through for years at a time. All right, that's it.
I just want to emphasize, that was kind of where I was getting with the overtime, and this council did make some good interventions in public safety, that there are some positive trends there. And I just would hate to see that get killed because we forget what is contributing, because this is the hardest thing with those pipelines. This is an easy thing to cut in a bad budget year, and you pay the piper X amount of years later, you don't pay it for this year in terms of service level.
Yeah, and if I may just to build off, underscore the point again, because unless you work in the space, you may not be familiar with all the dynamics. There's this 18-month training period, which makes it unique from a lot of the other jobs that we have in the city, where we can hire you and then you're pretty much on the job doing the work the day after that we give you your badge. Works very differently if you're answering 911 calls. Those folks are essentially air traffic controllers. Just takes a lot of training to do that. Same with fire, same with cops. So just be very careful as you touch this space.
Great. You wanna-
Great. Thank you all. As we move kind of into the last section here, I'll just pause and say I'm super appreciative and encouraged by the conversation, the interactivity, the sort of depth of the questioning. I can say I've been doing this for a lot of years, both at the city and outside the city, and that's not always the case to have that kind of interactivity, and so just really appreciate that. We've had maybe a couple hours of not super exciting great news. I think the last piece here, at least relatively, is good news and is exciting. Want to talk a little bit about evolution of the city's budget process, which this work session is kind of launching us into. I do have great optimism that despite the math realities and the hard realities that we're facing, that the city's new alignment and the conceptualizing of a better budget process is going to be a positive for the city going forward. Budget development, the improvements to budget development process will be a multi-year effort over multiple budget cycles. We won't be able to perfect the changes over the next few months due to timing constraints, due to human resource constraints, due to this kind of yet to be determined council operational structure. But we're certainly implementing as much as we can right now while balancing to keep some flexibility in the process to accommodate those incoming perspectives. as the mayor indicated at the top of the work session, these changes that are currently underway and the changes that are in plan for the future are aligned with recommendations from GTAC, recommendations by the independent budget consultant report that was provided to the city earlier this year. Yeah, maybe if you want to move ahead. So in the past, let's say prior to right now, bureaus developed and created their own budget requests within guidance provided by the mayor, but mostly as independent silos and without a true citywide enterprise lens. This extremely vertical approach kind of led to siloed bureau-specific priorities, sometimes competing against each other, not only for funding, but sometimes for attention and for input. That old way created duplicative internal effort and inconsistent communication about trade-offs, including long-term costs, long-term service impacts, et cetera. It also forced critical funding discussions to occur in a really hectic kind of emergency environment that was sometimes could be devoid of transparency and minimize opportunity for meaningful public dialogue because it just happened in such a frantic kind of environment. The new process intends to, anyway, improve upon all those shortcomings. So starting right now, based upon the mayor's guidance, service areas will work within a service area to pull forward concepts to start identifying those budget trade-offs and interactivities within the service area, and then we'll manicure space for enterprise citywide collaboration through the fall and the early winter to support more effective and responsive decision-making. And just to reiterate that point, instead of budget requests being developed internally within a silo and pushed upward kind of through a single bureau director and a commissioner, budget concepts will instead be vetted internally, collaboratively, first within a service area, then within the citywide leadership team, and then more broadly with the mayor, with the city council, and with Portlanders, with the ability to adapt and adjust along the way. In addition, by streamlining the inputs that feed into that enterprise system, we expect that'll provide efficiency for the hundreds of city staff that have a role in budget development. And then lastly, the availability, timing, and quality of the information that becomes available will improve transparency to the public and enhance opportunities for meaningful community engagement. And if we can go back just one slide, I'll just flag in this rubric, and I believe this is directly taken from the independent consultant report, we're kind of currently at or just about at step 3, which is issue budget guidance. Step 1 and 2 are a little bit somewhat underway in real time, but would just acknowledge that this is one of those moments where we just haven't really had the opportunity to meaningfully complete, in this case, steps 1 and steps 2. We're kind of doing step 1 a little bit today. Strategic goals and process is a little bit in development in real time, but this is really the path moving forward. And then maybe to move to the requested, sorry, one more back. Yeah, great. So this is a little bit of the internal process that I talked about. And so really that first top box, yellow box on the left by November 1 is starting here in the next few weeks with support from the city budget office, the deputy city administrators, and other city leaders. Will work over a series of discussions to develop budget concepts. Those will help identify shared perspectives, help identify upstream, downstream, kind of cross-stream service and cost impacts. We, of course, expect to remain in active communication with the city administrator and with the incoming mayor as soon as that person's identified, and with other citywide leadership groups and public formats as that evolves. That conversation, November, December, maybe leading into January, will culminate in preparation of a trial budget in early February, and that's sort of aligned to slide 5 on the prior slide. It's what we typically in the past might have thought of as the requested budget. So now there will be this sort of trial budget, which will be like a requested budget. It'll feel like that, but it will be a little bit of a simplified presentation. It's not each bureau submitting up through their old silo. It has that collaborative effort to develop and provide a budget suggestion that already considers citywide trade-offs and a potential strategy to meet priority city needs within the revenue limitations that then becomes a tool for communicating in spring and through the remaining budget cycle. And that just isn't something we've ever had available during that time frame for consideration. So that is a massive change, massive improvement to the process. From there, from that point in February, it will kind of start to feel a little bit more like a normal spring and summer process with public engagement, kind of typical cadence, and then ultimately council actions in May and June. The last thing I'll say about the process is, this is really for the city and for our community, it's major change management. Our DNA around budget process expectations, both internal and external, runs really deep. We've been doing it a certain way for a lot of years. And so we're working diligently to kind of revision, re-educate one another about the new pathway. We expect that we're not going to get it perfectly right out of the gate. And so we expect to continue to adjust and continuously improve as we gain kind of live experience about what works best and what needs adjustment. The last slide I just wanted to highlight is kind of a quick update on a significant body of work in progress to specifically improve community engagement around the budget process. Again, kind of multifaceted strategy. They'll have multiple forums, some familiar, some may be new, multiple formats, multiple touch points throughout the process year round. Now we're starting this midstream while the budget's already kind of in motion. So, the starting point isn't necessarily intended to be October 22nd, but that's where we are today. So I just want to acknowledge it is intended to be year-round conversation and integrated with other community engagement efforts that are also going on around the city. Yesterday, in collaboration with the communications team, we published kind of a Budget 101 body of information, which aims to kind of demystify some of the key budget purposes, process requirements, and we'll continue to provide updated, hopefully simplified versions of some key information on an ongoing basis as the budget develops. And then again, in spring, with the availability of that trial budget and the benefit of having a new council on board, having some better information and operationalizing of district structure conversations, we anticipate a more robust community engagement effort at that point. And maybe I'll stop there. Just again, the last thing I'd say, with recognizing a few minutes left for questions, is just thank you for your time and for your attention. Again, really appreciate the conversation. Look forward to continued input, and look forward to input from the incoming mayor, from the incoming council members, from the Portland community as we continue to navigate this forward. And with whatever time we have left, happy to take any other thoughts or questions.
All right.
If I may, thanks for the presentation. A lot of information here. I'm trying to boil down to kind of the main takeaway from the day. So there are knowns and there's some unknown. We have some known expenses and known fiscal gaps, and we have some unknown fiscal gaps. The unknowns are sort of where healthcare expenses are going to land, and let's say where new labor contracts are going to land. Help me understand what our known fiscal gap is. I think the takeaway message here is that we have about a $60 million budget gap that we need to address in the coming fiscal year, plus all the stuff that we're going to learn about. Should healthcare expenses come in higher, and should labor contracts come in more than the COLA?
That's about right.
Okay. I was just doing a little back of the envelope math. So if we have a $60 million budget gap and just were to do that through straight staff cuts, I think that translates into about 375 jobs, roughly. And we never balance the budget just by going, okay, we're just going to get rid of people. We always try to be more creative than that. But for those of you following at home and likely to sit in these seats in the coming year, that's the scope of the problem that we're looking at least $60 million, probably more given the way healthcare cost goes. If you want to intuitively understand that, that's about 375 jobs, which is kind of a lot. Mike, I was seeing your head shake there. You want to qualify that for me?
No, that's kind of a lot.
Are you estimating 150,000 per head?
Yeah, 160.
Okay.
Yeah, and I do want to just caveat again the sort of fiscal cliff gap, that roughly 40 million that I put out there. The mayor and council can choose they can choose to make that smaller, right? I mean, that can be part of the equation. And I think in general, looking at, I think it's an important note both for our staff who are going to start working on this or already starting to work on this. It's not realistic to say that if we are going to cut $60 million worth of stuff or even $40 million worth of stuff, that we would do that in a way that doesn't impact services. There has to be some understanding that we're going to impact services. And I think that's tough. Like, I think, recent cuts that have been taken have mostly, I mean, I don't want to sort of paint too broad a brush here, but, been able to be targeted at things where we were going to avoid service impacts. That's obviously the goal for any cut exercise, is to avoid service impacts. And so I think both for external services and for internal services, there has to be, a real prioritization for things that either have one-time funding that's expiring and things that have ongoing funding that could be cut. So I think there needs to be some reality check about what we're actually looking at.
I appreciate that, and I was not going to mention this here, but your comments do inspire me to share a thought that I've been developing for quite a bit. We talk about budgets and services and whatnot. One of the pieces of governing that is largely missing from the conversation, as far as I have noticed, is explicit goals around government productivity. Frankly, when I look at this enterprise and the rate at which expenses go up and the rate at which needs go up, it's awfully hard to imagine how you balance this over the long run without also having a commitment to becoming more efficient and more productive in delivering basic services year after year. I don't think those increases in productivity have to be gigantic. I don't know if we have to be 20% better at delivering our services year over year, but I think even if we mindfully set the goal of being 3% more efficient over time, that is an important key to making the city of Portland, and I think just local government in general, a more pencil out. I'm actually hopeful in our new form of government with the city administrator and deputy city administrators. We're actually set up to kind of achieve that in a way that we just haven't been historically. But frankly, in the absence of just a revolution in our economy or whatnot, I think we have to begin to take that productivity challenge and those productivity goals seriously. All right, thank you very much. I'll shut up.
All right, anything else?
I had a couple
Yeah,
really quick
yeah,
ones.
go for it.
I think it's your step 2, articulation of strategic priorities. I think we had a work session that was done on that. How would you articulate to the public what we articulated on that day?
Well, I don't know, Commissioner, how exactly to answer your question, to be fair, but I guess, this is sort of I think of that as it's almost the holy grail of budgeting, that you have a citywide strategy that's developed outside of the budget context. And then the budget is the tool to implement that strategy, which very much changes the conversation. That's where I and most, I think, government practitioners in my line of work would love to see that go. That's very, very difficult to do. But I think over multiple years and the way that that conversation is aligning, at least at this moment, I think we do have an opportunity to have that be kind of a year-round discussion, not a point-in-time discussion, but a year-round discussion about city priorities, how we operationalize those priorities, and then the budget becoming the tool to implement that.
When
Just to
yeah,
add on
go ahead.
process to Jonas, absolutely, I agree with everything Jonas said from a process perspective, but I think we have clear direction from this council, and we've had pretty clear direction for a number of years that, livability and houselessness, economic recovery, and public safety are really the focus. And we're putting this budget together with those focuses. So, and it's been pretty consistent for a while, at least as I've heard from this council.
Okay, I just wanted to calibrate. I think the political realities of achieving shared strategic priorities, I just would have some humility in the future as to be able to sustain that year after year. I think this is a fairly aligned council. That may be an anomaly, but we'll let future write its own story. I guess this is mostly a comment to Mayor Wheeler. I think Commissioner Rubio hinted at it, is whether we should be talking about a steeper than 5% based on what we know and what we know we don't know at this point. And I leave that to you. It strikes me that would not be irresponsible. Yeah, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I've never been a big fan of across-the-board cuts because I think it's antithesis of what you just said before that, which is that an enterprise focuses on what the priorities are, and we have tough conversations about what we're visioning, and then you noodle it much different than across the board. And that's probably difficult perhaps for government, but I do believe that that's exactly what Portlanders want us to do right now, because we're under the backdrop of your average Portlander saying that the current services are not okay. And so we have to listen to that and then prioritize and then go from there. So I agree that yes, there needs to be some steeper projections, but I don't know if it's right to just say across the board.
Well, that might be. Is there a, I mean,
Well, yeah, so, sorry to interrupt, Commissioner. So the guidance, at least as it's currently proposed and subject to change, of course, is sort of expect minimum 5%. And the intent is that within service areas that we're working to identify options that ultimately might produce and probably should produce for responsible management greater than 5%, so that as we refine that number in December and into the spring, we've got some things on the table to talk about trade-offs, that it's not just the old style straight line, everybody do your math and here's your 5% number, but really encourages that both accountability at the service area and bureau level to produce options, and then accountability and responsibility at the executive leadership level to help manicure and manage those into something that feels like a rational proposal.
And then could I just add on to that really quickly? So one thing is the 5% does exclude fire, police, and 911. I think the challenge of excluding more off the top is that you very quickly get down to no one takes a gun. And then the other thing to remember is this is just the starting point. Like the guidance is just the starting point to say to everybody, start doing this exercise. Ultimately, the balancing exercise where we say, okay, you know what, we're not going to take this cut in wherever because we need to keep that service, we need to maintain that service. It's a priority for Portlanders. We are going to take a bigger cut over here to compensate for the fact that we're not taking this cut. That's where that kind of nuanced discussion happens. But we need people to if we don't have cuts on the table, we have nothing to choose from. And then you're in a tough spot where somebody has to start saying, cut over here. Because what we really want is for everybody behind me to start working with their staff and put things on the table. And that is uncomfortable. And, but the idea is that the DCAs and the ACA and the city administrator can now get together and have those conversations holistically in a way that we couldn't before. And it used to be, you know, you go up through your commissioner in charge and you're making a political statement about putting something on the table. We need to have a safe place where people can put things on the table and they can be considered against one another and, you know, against other options that maybe aren't on the table yet or whatever, and have that conversation internally. And that's the idea behind sort of this process, is like, we do all of that work, and then at the end of February, we have a trial budget to put out there and say, here's our best thinking, right? Poke holes in it and figure out what we should change, but like, we've at least done the work thoughtfully together before that point.
Yeah, I appreciate that trade-off conversation at that level. I think we have to be thoughtful on public records laws. I mean, we went through some of that exercise last session, and then stuff's in the press, and you get political mobilization of what are otherwise conversations in the abstract that should be made in a safe space, and then suddenly it's not a safe space to have that conversation. So I completely followed your point as a idealized, way to do it, but we just have to figure out the public's entitled to some of those discussions, and you can activate things politically inadvertently just by going through doing the real work of talking about trade-offs. I guess this is a question for Mayor Wheeler in a way, because you've got 4 folks currently running right now, and this makes that an interesting question. But if you go back up to the strategic level, are there things we're doing now that we shouldn't be doing anymore? Because that's this current budget process sort of essentially carries over what we did last year. And, but that's not for you guys to answer what we should stop doing. It maybe you have an opinion on it that we should weigh in, but it is an elected question. That's the most fundamental one. And, I don't know if you have any opinion you want to share right now.
I actually do. Yeah, it's a good question, Commissioner Gonzalez, and I appreciate it. The new form of government gives us opportunities to consolidate and, to use Commissioner Mapp's language, be more effective and efficient with the dollars that we have. The easiest programs to cut are those that are not necessary. Those that are not necessary start with internal programming that is duplicative or doesn't need to be at the scale that it currently is. And Michael is obviously going through all of the bureaus and all of the budget with the DCAs to identify those opportunities. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing is that, as you mentioned, Commissioner, this council's been incredibly collaborative in terms of what our priorities are. Like, I've been in politics for a while. This is the most collaborative council I have seen in terms of understanding that our priorities are public safety, homelessness, livability, and the economic recovery of the city. And as such, even though there's been a little bit of drama, the truth is we've been passing budgets pretty routinely with everybody's agreement on 98% of it. And so I'd like to see that continue. That means, by definition, though, if you want to go forward in 25, 26 with those same priorities, there are probably some broad initiatives that should be called into question. And it's always hard for government to cut back on programs because there's always constituencies there waiting to take them up. But there will probably be a number of those opportunities. I have often wondered, and I'll muse aloud at my own peril, but I'm not running for anything. We have a number of programs at the street level that seem to me to be doing a lot of the same work. And I'm wondering if, and I realize that, they are different different unions have a say in that, different bureaus have a say in that. But I look at the work of some of those units and I wonder, could they be consolidated further into more efficient units? The other part of this is just making sure that we are in our lane and other governments are in their lane. And over the course of the last 4 years, we've taken up a lot of the slack. I'm still remembering when Schuyler had to go out and personally recruit behavioral health specialists and substance use disorder specialists to work with our task sites. We shouldn't have to do that at all. And a lot of that cost basis is still in the task site. So, the long-winded way of saying, yeah, I think there's opportunities. I don't know who will win what elections, but I want to reiterate something I said up front that may have gotten lost, which is my guidance will basically be for the next couple of weeks. And then a new mayor and a new council will get elected. And I'm very, very open to the new mayor and the new council directing what the guidance should be. And if they have a different opinion than what we're putting in here as a placeholder, so be it. But the bureau directors and the DCAs know that they better aim for 5%, because it is not a fruitless exercise given the projections that we have in front of us. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on what the commissioner said or Michael, but yeah, I think you're spot on, to be perfectly honest with you.
I think you guys have covered it really well. Particularly the discussion about being strategic and is the target right and how do you go about that. I think Jonas and Ruth have covered that really well. At the end of the day, this is an incredibly human exercise. And we all have biases, and we've all done certain things certain ways for a long time, and our identity starts to get wrapped up in it. And so these are really hard things for human beings to do. And we need a structure within which they can do it and feel both safe, heard, and yet at the end of the day, we as an institution can make more strategic decisions about how we invest the taxpayers' money. And I think our new structure gives us a chance to do that better than we have in the past. But it's still a really human exercise, and we have to recognize that. I think the target in guidance is no more than a signal of how severe the issue is. That's all it is. We really do have to be strategic about what are the most important things that we can't afford not to invest in. And that's a hard conversation, because that, by definition, it means there'll be other things we don't invest.
So let me riff off this for a second, since you mentioned it. Let's imagine that we were doing a budget in an environment where we had dialed back 8 years, 10 years, 12 years. We wouldn't be having this conversation at all. But because of homelessness and the explosion, particularly in the wake of COVID, because of the new opioids flooding our streets and drug addiction, and the resulting livability and public safety issues that we're experiencing in our community, there's a debate about how much are we actually spending on those things. I still maintain it's several $100 million. Other people who are smarter than me maintain it is less, but let's just assume it's a lot. If we could address homelessness in a meaningful way, if we could address the mental health and addiction crisis on our streets, which is not all the city's responsibility, but we're in the mud, we're at ground zero, the pressure on our budget would be diminished significantly. And so I think that's the North Star, and that's why we've reserved or prevented those other bureaus from cuts, and why I fought fairly diligently to maintain our shelter system in the budget. But if we can maintain those things that reduce those significant overarching problems that this council has uniformly prioritized, I think eventually we will be in a position where our cost structure comes back into alignment with the revenue structure.
I think
that's my hope.
Yeah, I think we likely all share the hope. The challenge right now is that despite a number of interventions, I'm not sure we're on a trajectory that's reducing the homeless problem. That doesn't mean that our investments aren't good ones. Task sites and safe rest villages are getting pushed through. It's whether some of these contributing factors, to what extent are they outside of local government's control? That's a broader conversation.
Yeah.
I just had two other very quick process questions, going down a level. So the budget advisory committees, what expectations have we set with those folks? Because I am concerned that we have set expectations that they'll have substantial influence on the budget, and I'm not sure we have the support in place to actually support those PACs. And I guess this I don't want to open up a whole other can of worms, but we did have a couple weeks of the conversation on advisory committees that are sort of just get carried over because that's the way we did it previously. And certainly BACs and the consultants report was one of the things that was identified. So I'm seeing what's on the slide, but I'm also trying, do we actually have a staffing model to support the BACs that you're purporting to retain?
I know there's a team working on those details. I would say at the highest level, this is one of those we're in an awkward moment. Realities that we know there's the old way that we're moving from, each bureau has a BAC. And so the mayor's original kind of preliminary guidance was we'd heard from some bureaus that they have very strong functioning BACs that are staffed both by internal staff and participants on those committees. We'd heard from other bureaus that maybe that wasn't the case. So the guidance was use them if you can, use them if they're available. In the future path, we absolutely anticipate that there should be, will be, and this is in alignment with GTAC recommendations, independent recommendations, that there would be a service area BAC that's a formalized part of the process. Ruth, I don't know, I know there's a team working on standing this up now. So I don't know what the timing is in the context of this budget cycle. It's going to be a little awkward as we're adjusting between the old and the new.
And I didn't mean to hold us over. I thought we were at 12:30. It looks like we're over at 12. I apologize for that. I just would, if we need to have a hard conversation now about that, I don't know why we delay the hard conversation. We just don't think they're going to work that way, the new form of government. Then I am very okay recalibrating expectations as one vote up here. Let's just stop the madness. This is not the way it's going to work after January 1, and we're in the middle of preparing a budget for how it's going to work after January 1. So I'm all for cutting the cord if necessary.
Great.
Thank you for your time.
Anything else for the good of the order? Thank you. Great presentation. You guys did a terrific job answering our questions. Thanks, colleagues. Good questions. We're adjourned.
Yeah, thank you. Really helpful.
Thanks, guys. That was-